everyone, welcome back. Today's a really fun video because I'm just answering your skincare questions. If you're new to my channel, my name is Susan Yara. I have been in the beauty industry for 2 decades. I started off as a beauty editor. I now have my own skincare line called Naturium, and I love talking about beauty and skincare specifically on this YouTube channel. If that sounds good to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel and give this video a big thumbs up. All right, so every once in a while, I start to get very overwhelmed by these skincare questions I get, whether it's on the channel, like in comments, or via DM. So it's always really fun to just gather all the questions into one place and pick out the ones that are probably the most asked questions where I see like constantly popping up. That way we can just knock it all out for everybody, right? So today we're gonna get into some of these questions. All right, so the first one, no matter how many times I go over this topic, it always is a common question, and that is to share the general order of layering skincare products, oil before or after moisturizer. The easiest way I say to think about it is thinnest to thickest, but I realize, especially these days with lots of different products to choose from, it's really hard to figure out what is thinnest to thickest, because if you look at an oil, it seems like it's much thinner than a moisturizer, but sometimes it's not. So the general order can go something like this. You cleanse, whether that's a double cleanse or just one cleanse. Then you go into your toners or essences. And these toners or essences can be exfoliating, they can be hydrating, they can be brightening. It doesn't matter. That's the next step. And usually the way to spot a toner or an essence is that it has this like light liquidy kind of feel to it. So that's gonna be your thinnest. It almost feels like it's water in your hands. Next up would be your serums. And these tend to be the products that have the most concentrated ingredients in them. So they're gonna feel a little bit light on your skin, but not as light as a toner or an essence. They're gonna be just a little bit thicker. They tend to be more of like a gel kind of texture to them, whether that's like a thick or a thin gel. They still have more of like a gel texture to them. They tend to feel really hydrating. You know, sometimes you'll see that serums are more of like an oil. Sometimes that can also be okay in this step. As long as they're light enough and absorb quickly, then they're considered kind of like your serum step. Another one that I think can get confusing is that sometimes serums can be more like an emulsion. So you see even from my own brand Naturium, we have products that we call emulsions, and that's because they're just a little bit heavier than your typical serum. They don't have a gel texture. They almost have a lotion texture, but they still absorb really quickly and they feel really light on the skin. So that's also kind of in that serum step as well. And then after that, you move into your moisturizers. And for people with oily skin, your moisturizer can also feel like a gel or like a serum in a lot of ways because it can be a light moisturizer. What you're really looking for is something that's going to be occlusive enough for you. And I think that's like a really important distinction because it all comes down to your own skin. So you're gonna put on your moisturizer for this step, and then usually it's recommended to finish with a skincare oil if you use oils. I don't always use oils. I think they have their very specific needs, and I do like oils. I just don't think that they need to be in your everyday skincare routine. And then when it comes to eye serums and eye creams, I think it's the same thing. You're really looking at the texture of it. If it's more of like a liquidy gel texture, you wanna put that on before your moisturizer. If it's more of a moisturizer kind of eye cream, then you're gonna put it on either before your moisturizer or after. Do we need to cycle through retinols 3 months on and then off? When it comes to your retinoids, you do not have to cycle on and off of it. I don't actually know where this myth came from. I think maybe people are kind of like assuming since you have to do this with prescription hydroquinone, that you also have to do it with like your retinoids or your prescription retinoids, but that is not the case. In fact, what you're really trying to do with your retinoids is you're trying to get yourself to get to like as many days as possible using it. So when it comes to like retinol, I use that every single night, 7 days a week. And then, you know, like when I'm on tretinoin, the only reason I ever actually stop tretinoin is just because I'm not getting to the point where my skin is acclimating to it. So then I kind of just fall off and then I go back to just using regular retinol. But really the goal is to try to get to using your retinoid as many nights as possible in a row and like never ever stopping it. I know people who say that they have been using their prescription tretinoin for 20 years and their skin looks amazing. how often can you use azelaic acid? That is a great question because you hear the word acid and it makes you immediately think that this must be really strong, and you definitely don't want to use ingredients that are too strong on your skin and overdo it and then irritate your skin. But azelaic acid is a little bit different. It's not an AHA, it's not a BHA, it's a dicarboxylic acid, which is completely different and really means nothing to any of us that don't know much about skincare, except that it's not your typical acid that gets used in exfoliating products. It does have some slight exfoliating properties to it, but technically it should be gentle enough to use every single day. And if your skin can tolerate it, especially if it's at a lower percentage, then you can technically use it morning and night. And your dermatologist, if they prescribe it to you, even at like 15% or 20%, they might actually recommend that you use it morning and night, especially if they're trying to treat some kind of a skin ailment like rosacea. So it really kind of depends on your skin. You still have to go slowly when you're introducing something new, especially an active like azelaic acid into your skincare routine. One thing about azelaic acid is apparently it can make your skin tingle when you first start using it if you're new to it. So if you start using it and your skin starts to tingle or it feels a little bit itchy, you just have to kind of power through it and let your skin acclimate to it. If you work out late morning, midday, do you redo your AM skincare routine after? Okay, so this is a tricky one because this is really personalized. If I'm gonna work out anytime in the morning, whether it's late morning or like right in the middle of the day, then I usually won't even bother with my makeup. All I'll do is wake up and throw some sunscreen onto my face. That way I just have some protection, especially if I'm gonna go out for a walk or if I'm going to be sitting next to a window or anything. I'll just have sunscreen on, and then I might even reapply my sunscreen to then work out, depending again, if I'm gonna be outside, like going for a run, or if I'm gonna go, like inside a gym and not see the sun at all, then I'm not gonna bother reapplying my sunscreen. So really the only important thing to do before your workout is to throw on some sunscreen if you need to. So it's not really a redo of your skincare routine. It's not like you really did your skincare routine if it's an elaborate one. Obviously, if your skincare routine is only just washing your face and then throwing on sunscreen, then yes, you're redoing your skincare routine. But I would almost see it as then I would do my workout and then I would probably shower and then I would start my entire skincare routine, right? So that's kind of the way I would think of it. So really it's very, very personalized, but yeah, you definitely have to do your skincare routine after you work out because I would assume you shower. If a sunscreen has HA, which is hyaluronic acid in it, is it bad because HA isn't trapped with moisturizer on top? This is such a good question and such a fair question too. So the reason why this is even a question is because you've probably heard me and other skincare enthusiasts say that you have to lock in your hyaluronic acid serum with a moisturizer or with an occlusive. And so the way to think about it with your sunscreen is that usually sunscreen tends to be occlusive enough. And that's where it can get really tricky. A lot of the time you'll see like, a sunscreen might have hyaluronic acid in it, but then it's also a moisturizer or something, or it has that moisturizer base, then you're totally fine. It's serving that same purpose of locking in your hyaluronic acid. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You'll end up seeing like makeup has hyaluronic acid in it, primers have hyaluronic acid in it. I mean, it's an ingredient that is in so many different products, and a lot of the time it's making the product feel nice and hydrating and liquidy too. But most of those types of products, like your sunscreen, like your primer, like your foundation, those are all meant to be after your skincare routine, so they have their own occlusive properties that help to lock it in. Also from the same person, is it possible to use too much hyaluronic acid? Hyaluronic acid has some really great PR. You hear hyaluronic acid as, like this amazing ingredient that's going to change your skin and hydrate it. And, in a lot of ways it's true. Hyaluronic acid does a lot for your skin. It definitely helps it get more plump and firm feeling. But there are other hydrating ingredients out there that have a very similar effect that you also have in a ton of your different products. I'm saying like you have these ingredients in your cleansers, in your toner, in your serums, in your moisturizers, in your sunscreen, in your primer, in your foundation. And all these ingredients do is add this hydration, this nice feeling, this like smooth, hydrating, kind of soothing feeling to your skin. And a lot of the time, these ingredients are very mild and gentle for your skin. That's really the point of it. And hyaluronic acid is one of those ingredients. Just because it gets pinpointed as like a star ingredient doesn't really mean that you have to buy yourself like a hyaluronic acid serum specifically on its own. A lot of the time, you're gonna have plenty of HA in so many of your different products that you might not need it. If you look at your products, you'll notice it's in so many different products that you already own, and you technically can't overdo it with hyaluronic acid. How long can you go without without exfoliating if your skin barrier is damaged. XOXO. I like the little XOXO. Okay, this is a really good question. You've probably heard a lot of people say that if your skin barrier gets irritated or damaged, then you don't want to exfoliate or use anything that's really strong and active on your skin until it heals. That same kind of logic goes with exfoliating. You want to make sure your skin gets to a place where it feels nice and healthy and it has healed. Even if it starts to look a little flaky and a little bit dry, this again is part of the healing process. I would make sure that you don't introduce anything active, including your exfoliants, until your skin doesn't feel tender or sensitive anymore. So you really just want to take a step back from all your actives, let your skin heal, and then introduce your exfoliants again. This is a really good question. How do you figure out if your skin is allergic to something? This is actually a topic that I feel like needs to be talked about and discussed more, because we hear about how you can have allergic reactions to skincare ingredients, but we don't really know how to identify it, right? So obviously the best way to identify it is to go to a doctor, right? They have tests that will help you try to identify it, but that can be expensive, it can be lengthy, it can be an entire ordeal in a process, right? The issue with trying to figure it out at home is that you actually have to introduce an ingredient into your skincare routine. You have to put it on. And from the way I understand it, and this is honestly something I really started to understand as a mom, because, you know, I kept asking like, oh, does my child have an allergy to X, Y, and Z? And my pediatrician would say, well, they have to be exposed to it first to be able to even develop an allergy. You're not really born with allergies, which is such an interesting concept. So if you need to figure out if you're allergic to something, you have to put it onto your skin. You have to actually be introduced to it first off. Like if you've never had an ingredient on your skin before and then you introduce it to your skin for the very first time and have a quick reaction, that's just a reaction that you're having to it. It's not necessarily an allergic reaction. From what I've heard from dermatologists, the way to distinguish an allergic reaction to just a reaction or just a sensitivity is if you have an immediate reaction to it, then it tends to be more of a sensitivity. If a day or two goes by and then you develop some kind of a rash or some type of irritation, then that is an allergy. So really when it comes down to it, the first step is just introducing an ingredient into your skincare routine to start with, and then paying attention over time. So that's why I kind of go back to that whole rule of always just slowly introducing new skincare into your skincare routine. Start with one product at a time and use that for like a week to just see how your skin is reacting to it before you add in anything else. And this goes for even just really gentle products. You just want to make sure there isn't something in there that's going to irritate your skin or develop into an allergy. Using Retin-A nightly, alternating between vitamin C and BHA in the AM, where does tranexamic acid belong in my skincare routine? All right. Good question. So the kind of skincare routine that this person is explaining is one where she's kind of alternating these active ingredients. She's keeping her vitamin C and her BHA in her morning routine and alternating that, and then she uses her tretinoin at night. So where can she include an ingredient like tranexamic acid? Well, here's the thing. Tranexamic acid tends to play well with other skincare ingredients. It's also a very gentle ingredient. It's usually gentle. Obviously, it's all personal. Anybody can use any kind of ingredient and have some kind of a reaction to it, but overall, it tends to be a very gentle ingredient. So you can technically use your tranexamic acid in the morning and also at night, and also with all of those active ingredients, because it's technically not supposed to interact poorly with any of those, and it's not supposed to cause any sensitivity. What skincare products are safe to mix with retinol? So I think the first thing to distinguish here is that I almost never recommend mixing, like actually physically mixing your skincare ingredients and your products yourself. That's called like cocktailing your own products. And I'm not a huge fan of that concept because I just like to leave it to the formulators and the chemists to do that. But when it comes to layering your skincare ingredients, what can you layer with your retinol as far as probably like the actives that you're using? The thing is, there aren't any real rules to it, right? Like if your skin can handle using retinol with any of your other active ingredients, like your vitamin C with exfoliating ingredients like glycolic acid, then you're technically gonna see more results. It's going to just work faster, but it can potentially lead to irritation if that combination is too strong for your skin. So what I would do first is just get used to using your retinol. And if you can get to the point where you're using your retinol every single night and your skin doesn't seem irritated, it's in great shape, it's reacting well to it, then you might want to start to slowly introduce other actives into your skincare routine, but pay attention and go slowly with it. If you find that your skin starts to get irritated after you start using, like a glycolic acid or some kind of an exfoliant in the same routine as your retinol, then I would take a step back, try to only do it like once every single week like that, or just don't do it. Like I tend to move a lot of my exfoliating skincare products to my morning routine because I tend to find that my skin handles that better. And then I just keep retinol for nighttime with like all my brightening ingredients, like my tranexamic acid, like even hydroquinone. When I am using it, I still use it at night with my retinoid. What to use for hormonal acne during pregnancy? So this is a really good question, and I feel like we've come so far as far as like the knowledge that we have of the ingredients you have to actually avoid during pregnancy versus like what we knew back in the day. First off, definitely ask a dermatologist if you are not sure. Your derm is gonna know so much more about what's safe for your skin versus, and even just me, as a person that's a skincare enthusiast, it's always best to be safe and ask your doctor. But from what I know from my personal experience and also from, like working with derms and watching their videos and just learning what it is that they have to say, I feel like the information has really changed a lot. One of the things that they always put out there now is that you can use a lot of these wash-off products like the benzoyl peroxide cleansers, the salicylic acid cleansers up to like 2%. You're washing off these active ingredients, so it's a gentle way to, treat that acne, but it's also washing off. So it's minimizing the ability of the ingredient to fully absorb into your skin, which is really, just rare for it to absorb so much that it would affect your baby in the first place. But if you're worried about it, then use a cleanser that just washes off. That's one of the easiest ways to avoid any kind of potential harm, I suppose. You also, though, have ingredients like azelaic acid. And this is why it became such a big deal to me to have azelaic acid in my own skincare line, is because I've finally realized after I was pregnant a second time that azelaic acid is this like amazing jack of all trades ingredient, especially if you're pregnant and you're avoiding most active ingredients. It really helps to minimize any of like your clogged pores, any of that visible redness and everything. So that kind of translates over to, like your hormonal acne as well. So I see lots of great results with azelaic acid just in general for all skin types. But if you're pregnant, this is an ingredient that you can use, and you can go get a prescription even from your dermatologist if you feel like you need something that's a little bit stronger. But again, there are so many different ingredients that you actually still can use, and we know so much more now about what you can and can't use. The other thing that's been really interesting to know is that once you have the baby, and this is from Dr. Sam Ellis, I think she's really driven this point home lately. She has videos, by the way, on her own YouTube channel where she's talking about her own pregnancy and now that she's had her baby and everything, all the skincare topics that have come up just for herself because she just had a baby, right? So I recommend going over to her YouTube channel and finding her on Instagram as well. She's been, just a breath of fresh air when it comes to this information and false information that's out there. Also, Amy KOBERLING, she has really great information, also recently had a baby. They both share some really great tips. But one thing that I learned from Dr. Sam Ellis is that once you have the baby, all of these, worries that we've had about, an ingredient potentially like harming the fetus, well, the fetus is now out. It's an actual baby. So what you were worried about before no longer applies to the situation. So she's already started to add tretinoin back into her skincare routine. She's already added, a lot of her different actives back into her routine, and she is breastfeeding and feels like it's completely safe according to the information that is out there. So again, talk to your doctor if you are unsure of what you can and can't use during pregnancy and even while breastfeeding. But I also recommend finding some of these dermatologists that have just such a fresh perspective now. What is the appropriate age for starting to use skincare, serums, retinol, etc., please? This is a great question and one that I get all the time. I think there is your skincare routine before you hit puberty, and then there's a skincare routine for after you hit puberty. I think that is that time in your life when everything changes for your skin, when you hit puberty, which means that it can be very personal, like all things with skincare, right? Like some people might hit, puberty when they're 10, 11, 12, and some people might not hit that until they're like 16, 17, 18. It's all very dependent on you, but before puberty, you're basically just using cleansers, moisturizers, and sunscreen. Like those are the main products that you're using in your skincare routine. But when you hit puberty, you have hormonal changes to your skin. So that can mean that you start to have acne, you start to have oily skin, you start to just have clogged pores in general. I remember one of the first things I noticed when I hit puberty was I started to get blackheads, and I had no idea what this was. I was like, oh my gosh, why is my skin looking like it's dirty? That's what I actually thought it was. And it was probably a little dirty because I didn't know how to properly cleanse my skin. And I was 12 years old when I really start to hit puberty. And my mom was like, we need to take you to the Clinique counter and get you a proper skincare routine. That's what we did back in the mid 2000s. We went to the Clinique counter and got on a 3-step system. So it really comes down to that first experience of puberty. When you hit puberty, it also then depends on what it is that you're experiencing. So if you have oilier skin, if you have clogged pores, if you're starting to get acne, you sometimes might want to go to a dermatologist and really assess your skin at that point. And this goes out to like the moms and the dads that are watching too. If your teen is dealing with really bad acne, for instance, you want to handle that with a dermatologist sooner rather than later, because this can affect their skin throughout all of high school and can actually permanently damage their skin. They can end up with, acne marks, deep acne scars that are hard to get rid of. All of that is so much harder to get rid of than your actual acne, which you can't even really completely get rid of. You can just treat it. So I think that's really important to get ahead of. As far as just introducing ingredients like your serums, your actives, I think again, when you hit puberty, it's important to start exfoliating if you need it. I don't think it's a bad thing to introduce retinoids if it's going to help with any of your clogged pores, or if you're starting to get like mild acne or even bad acne. Again, though, I would recommend going to see a derm to see what prescriptions they're going to recommend for your skin. So, I think it really comes down to puberty. When you hit puberty, what is your skin doing? All right, next up is how much time should one allow between different steps in their skincare routine? This is one that I just cannot talk about enough. People always ask this question. So basically it comes down to, I always apply my skincare products while my skin is still damp. So I never let anything completely dry down and then put my next product on. You want to make sure you put a product on, you spread it nicely, pat it into your skin, and then while your skin is still damp, it's going to actually absorb the next ingredients even better. And you're keeping it hydrated and comfortable. And then you put your moisturizer on, and then you let it dry down. If it's a morning skincare routine, you're gonna let your moisturizer dry down enough so that you can put your sunscreen on, so it creates a nice film over your face. And then at night, the only time that you're going to put your product on after all your skincare is dried down is your retinoid. And that's usually with a prescription retinoid, like your tretinoin. And that's really just to minimize the strong effect of that tretinoin as you're acclimating to it. So if you think about it, like your skincare ingredients absorb better and work better when they're put on damp skin. So you're almost kind of doing the opposite with your tretinoin when you're trying to acclimate to it. You're trying to minimize the effect of the tretinoin and keep it from working so well by waiting till your skin is dry. Whether it's a gel or an oil, my face always feels a bit tight during and after double cleansing. Is this normal? So you'll often hear me say that the goal with your cleanser is to not feel like you are stripping your skin. You don't want it to feel dry and tight after you cleanse your skin. The thing is, I think sometimes this gets translated to, you don't want your skin to feel tight and dry at all after you have washed your face. But if you let your skin completely just dry after you've washed it, of course it's gonna feel tight and dry because you actually let it dry. Like anytime you're adding water to your skin, if you're using anything that's going to cleanse your skin, like actually have surfactants in it that's going to actually cleanse your skin, you're technically using like a soap on your face, right? So no matter what, you are still cleansing and you're still, removing some of those natural lipids of your skin. So if you let it completely dry down after washing and you don't put anything else on it, then of course your skin's gonna feel a little tight and dry afterwards. So that goes back to that tip of applying all of your products while your skin is still damp. You basically don't wanna let your skin get to that point where it's so dry that you're feeling it feel dry and tight. You wanna make sure that throughout the whole entire process, your skin feels nice and damp, and then you're adding all of these products, and then you're putting on your moisturizer while your skin still feels nice and healthy and damp and hydrated. That way you lock that all in and then you're completely done. So that's a real way to think of it. So you really just don't want to feel like you're stripping your skin, you're overly stripping your skin when you're using a cleanser. This is one of the reasons why a lot of physical exfoliants can be too harsh for your skin, especially if you use them a lot. They can feel a lot more stripping to the skin because they're actually physically stripping your skin. So that's why, you'll always hear me and other people say like, ooh, be a little more gentle with that because you don't want to overdo it and then strip your skin. All right, so those were some of the skincare questions I got. There were so many that I actually ended up just answering some of them via DM and also sharing to my stories. I'll definitely do more skincare Q&As in the future, so make sure you follow me on Instagram. You can also ask me questions in the comments below. You can find me on Instagram at Susan Yara, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.